All right, let's get into it. Today we are tackling the massive topic of illegal drug policy, but probably not in the way you're used to. We're going to put aside all the usual moral arguments and the political noise for a minute and just focus on one simple thing: the money. It's time for a financial audit. And this, right here, is our guiding question. Let's forget the slogans and the headlines for a moment and just ask this really basic economic question. Because, as you're about to see, when you actually follow the money, a very uncomfortable picture starts to take shape.
So, to understand the costs, first we've got to get our heads around the scale of the market itself. What are we actually talking about here?
And let's be really clear about this. We are not talking about those made-for-TV street values you hear about on the news. No. We are focused on the actual, real-world cash that people spend.
And here we go. Here's our first big number. According to mainstream estimates, the illegal drug market in England and Wales has an annual retail value of about £10 billion. Think about that. That's a huge, completely untaxed, totally unregulated economy, and it's all happening in the shadows. So keep that number in your head, 10 billion.
Okay, so that's the £10 billion market. Now let's look at the other side of the balance sheet. What does it cost us, the public, to deal with all the fallout?
This is the crucial question, isn't it? If the market itself is worth $10 billion, what's the final bill that lands on our doorstep for everything that comes along with it?
And here is the truly staggering figure. Analysis commissioned by the government consistently puts the total social and economic cost at around £20 billion a year. You heard that right. Double the value of the entire market.
So what exactly is in that enormous number? Well, it's everything. It's the strain on our healthcare system. It's the cost of drug-related crime. It's the billions we pour into policing, the courts, and prisons. And then there's the wider hit to the economy, like lost productivity from people whose lives are affected.
And this, right here, is the core of the problem. For every single pound spent in the illegal drug market, we, the public, spend 2 pounds cleaning up the mess. I mean, this isn't just a rounding error. It is a fundamental, structural imbalance baked into our entire approach.
So why? Why does this huge mismatch even exist? To get that, we need to look at one of the biggest assumptions that's been driving drug policy for decades. For a long time, the stated goal was total elimination. Creating a drug-free society. But if you look at history, some level of drug use has pretty much always existed. So, what does the actual population data tell us today?
Well, the data is pretty clear. In England and Wales, about a third of adults have tried an illegal drug at some point. Around 10% have used one recently. But the number of people who have serious dependent use, the group where almost all the harm is concentrated, is actually much, much smaller. We're talking only 2 to 3%.
And that's the real key here. The problem isn't millions of casual users, it's the intense harm that's focused on that small minority. And when you design a system aimed at eliminating all use, well, that's exactly how you end up spending £20 billion a year to chase a £10 billion problem.
Sometimes the best way to understand a system that feels broken is to compare it to one we know really well. So for a second, let's talk about tobacco.
The comparison is pretty eye-opening. Tobacco's legal, it's taxed, and it's visible. Now, its social cost is also huge, around £25 billion. But because it's a legal market, we can measure it, we can tax it to the tune of over £8 billion a year, and we can actually design policies to manage and reduce the harm. The illegal drug market has a similar scale of social cost, but gives us none of those tools.
And all of this brings us right back to the heart of our financial audit. Back to that simple, stark, and really uncomfortable ratio we saw right at the start.
Let's look at it again. £10 billion in criminal hands on one side versus $20 billion in public costs on the other. This one chart just lays bare the incredible inefficiency of the whole approach. For every pound that fuels the illegal market, the state spends 2.
And let's be absolutely clear on this, that 2-to-1 ratio, it's not a blip, it's not bad luck, it is the direct, predictable result of the very system we have designed. It's a feature, not a bug.
In other words, we've built a system where the market just keeps going, and all the costs associated with it just multiply. Why? Because simply making something illegal doesn't make the demand for it disappear. So the market moves into the shadows, and once it's there, every single related problem, health, crime, you name it, becomes so much harder and so much more expensive to deal with.
So that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. When you just look at the raw numbers, you have to ask yourself, if our current strategy is costing us double what the market is even worth, what are we actually buying for all that money? It's a question that sort of reframes the entire debate, taking it away from pure morality and putting it squarely in the world of simple, pragmatic, and very, very expensive math.